Hi guys, this is Daniel, the founder of EduPros USA. I have another exciting interview for you today. My special guest is Dr. Josh Rassmussen, who is a professional philosopher and a professor here at APU, Azusa Pacific University. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Rassmussen. You guys should know that he is one of the leading thinkers, upcoming thinkers in the philosophy of mind, which is a fascinating subject. Maybe we can touch on that a little bit in our interview today. But mainly, I want to speak to you about college and continue to speak to you about college as we've been speaking in the series. And why is college such an important place to be for a high school student pondering, going on, moving on? And college is just much more than getting a job, which is the popular way of thinking about going to college, is to find a well-paying job. But college can be a life-altering experience. It can really shape who you are as a person and how you express your gifts and callings in the world, and what you do with that. And I think Dr. Rassmussen is a good person to talk about that, because not only has he obviously gone through college and received a PhD, but as a professor, he works with students all the time, and he helps them in the process of developing their mind and developing their character, and teaching them to be a lifelong learner and how that will impact their life in the future. So Josh, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure.
And how you decided to go to college, and what college did for your life?
Sure, yeah. So I remember when I was in high school and just not really sure what to do. And so kind of my method was to figure out, okay, well, what are the most lucrative jobs? And then I will go to college and major to get, the best job, right? So I ended up getting a major in computer science because I was interested in programming, and it looked like you could make a lot of money doing that. And that was okay. But it's interesting because, there's a statistic I read somewhere where that 90% of people, they go to college kind of for the same reason I did, to get that job, but then only 25% of people get a job in what they major in. So there's kind of a disconnect there. Right? And like, what's going on? And interestingly, I became a philosopher, so I didn't even major, I didn't get that job in my major as well. And I think one thing that a lot of people miss is they're merely looking to college for a job. And these days, you can get a lot of education online.
Sure.
So there are arguments against going to college if all you want is a job. But for me, what I found to be the most helpful in my own journey was when I shifted from seeing my education as a pathway merely for employment to seeing it as a resource for transformation, for life. And so once I discovered that difference, that set me on a different path.
Right. Just curious, what brought you to that realization? How did that aha moment come about in terms of what the value of college is in your life?
Yes.
How did you make that switch?
Yes. So for me, it really was discovering topics that interest me. So, there's some fun in programming, but it was kind of a means to an end.
Right.
But then when I began to have questions about the foundation of things and things that have to do with designing a life, I became curious. And so I began to read books, not to get an A, but just out of interest. And that interest-driven really just, that changed everything for me.
I smile because that's what I kind of preach to my students, is to pursue an area that excites them, that brings a smile to their face, that they want to go and read more about, and to ask about, and not just to think about what is lucrative in terms of pay, because now these days there are a lot of people that are professionals in a certain area. For example, there are lawyers and doctors that are not necessarily content, or they don't feel fulfilled. I've spoken to some doctors who when they get that phone call on Thanksgiving night that they have to go do a surgery, that it's like gloom for them. They don't want to go in because they want to enjoy it with their family. So part of pursuing that field, you have to take all of these variables into consideration to know what type of life you're going to lead when you do achieve that job. So when the time comes when you're getting that call, it's not a drudgery. It's not like, oh my God, why do I have to go in? So in the same in philosophy, I'm sure you spend time researching and writing books and writing papers.
And the passion, it flows from my desire.
But you love it. We were just talking about right before we got on how you enjoy it, and you started to teach me some things and lecturing me a little bit about.
We had a fun conversation.
It was a good conversation, but it comes out of you. It's an extension of who you are, who you are as a human being.
And everybody has that. Everybody has that thing, And I feel like college, sometimes people overestimate its value for getting a job and underestimate its value for transformation and connection and social capital and finding that purpose, that spark, that thing that makes you alive. Because you have all these opportunities, all these people, all these resources. And college really is what you make of it, right? I mean, when I was in there for those first stages, it really was. I would skip classes because I didn't see value in my classes. I didn't want to be there. But then when I found my passion, it all flipped around for me.
Now, I have a question about that spark and knowing your purpose. A lot of families and parents will ask, what do I want to major in? What should I study? I don't know what I want to be. And most of the time, I explain to them that they don't have to know as a 16, 17-year-old what what is it that they need to be.
Right.
And a lot of colleges, a lot of admissions offices will tell you, have told me that we don't want them to declare a major when they come in. We want them for the first 2 years to just explore and take different classes in different disciplines to see what they like. Take philosophy classes, take classes in the arts, take classes in math or in many different areas. And then they can see a sense of what they are good at and what they want to do. But do you think students should have a kind of an idea prior to coming onto the college campus of what they should do, or should they just go in, I guess, by faith, or just go into a college and then discover what they want to do?
Well, it's interesting. I think everybody's different, but I remember freshman year in college, and I was a computer science major. And there was a guy in his maybe mid-30s, and he was back in college. And I just remember thinking, I'm so glad I already figured out what I'm going to do with my life freshman year. And the irony is that I didn't. That wasn't my plan, right?
Right.
And I actually think that, sort of figuring out your purpose and scaling that, I think there's a lifelong project there. And I think one thing that you get in college, you can get, is tools for knowing what questions to ask, figuring out sort of what does make you come alive.
Yes.
But I guess just to be honest, it's hard to imagine like how I could recommend, you have to like figure out, what you're going to do like right away, because part of the point of college is to even gain the resources to experiment, to explore, and to discover.
Yeah. Right. Now, Josh, before we started, you were showing me a model of how you help students decipher what their profession they should go into, or what field they should pursue. I think if you can share that, it's kind of illuminating.
Well,
because I'm sure when you teach freshmen, correct? You have freshman classes, sophomore classes.
Yeah.
When students ask you as a professor, when they come to your office and say, Dr. Rassmussen, help me figure out, I don't know what I want to do in life. How do you answer that?
Yeah, it's like they come to my office and I'm ready for them to ask me these philosophical questions that we're talking about in class, right? But they want to understand like how to design their life. And so there's a few little things that I feel like I found very helpful in navigating my own life, in my own career, and really finding my purpose, finding that thing, that why behind what I do. And one of the little tools that I use is to ask 3 questions. So what do you enjoy? You could just get out a piece of paper and just list, like, what are the things you enjoy? What do you like? You like ice cream, you like coloring, you like whatever, YouTube videos. So what do you enjoy? And then go back to that list and ask, of those things, which of those things can you do that will add value to others, that will be a service to people, that will actually help people? So like for me, I discovered my joy for understanding philosophical things, but then there's all sorts of things I can be trying to figure out. Well, among those things, which of those things are people actually asking?
Right.
That I can serve people, they've got questions and I can help them think that through. And then the third question is, so you want to find the intersection between what you enjoy, what adds value, and that what can generate resources to scale what you do, right? So basically how you can make money. And that's a very effective tool, you know, and it's one that I can keep coming back to concentrate and get even clearer and better and better. But I'll tell students that, and then that will help them to kind of get started, even figure out what their purpose is.
Just to start a conversation.
Just to get started.
Yeah, just to get started.
Yes.
So that's a very good tool. I kind of tried it myself. I was playing a mind game, you know, with this tool, and it can help you refine, you know, what you want to do. So thank you for sharing that that model, that tool that you use. Now, a question that really, you know, parents want to know and students want to know is, what does a successful college student look like? How do I become the best student? How do I become a good student? How do I get the most out of my education? How do I maximize on that opportunity? You know, now you've taught students obviously, and you have you know, your top students, your mediocre students, and maybe your lower range of students.
Yes.
But can you speak about your top students? What type of character traits or
common features,
common features that they manifest, they show, that separates them and makes them effective students, even in philosophy?
Daniel, that's a great question. I mean, one thing that I'm always interested in, I don't know if you heard of the 80-20 rule. So there's this kind of principle that like 20% of what you do has 80% of the impact.
Okay.
And so that you find this out in different places, like 20% of philosophers are producing 80% of the articles, 20% of people make 80% of the money, you know, that sort of a thing.
Right.
And so, you know, I'm always looking for, you know, what is the 20% that makes you the most powerful? So for my students, you know, it's very different being a student and then out being the one who gives out the tests and seeing, you know, which ones rise to the top.
Right.
What are they doing? Like, what's in common? What's that 20% that makes them the most powerful?
Yes.
And I would say probably the number one is the thing that actually transformed my own journey in academia, which was to have an interest, to be motivated by interest. And so something that I even do, like with my students, that kind of help with that is, I'll tell them, you know, here are some topics, but I want you to find a topic that you can write a letter from to a friend. So I'm trying to stimulate their interest.
Right.
Just because I notice that, you know, when they're moved by interest, and so, you know, I understand some topics you're just not interested in them. So how do you anchor that to something you're interested in? But once you understand that if you get interested in, that's going to be the thing that's going to drive you towards, you know, succeeding in the class. That's the thing to ask, right? You know, and obvious things like students will put in the work, you know, but, you know, if you're not interested, you're not going to put in the work. And I can't tell you, put in the work, and then you'll succeed. Because you already know that, right? Like, so that does nothing for you, right? You know, but if I tell you to actually find a place, you know, because there's many places to choose from, find a place that emphasizes transformation rather than just a mere path to a job. That gives you more than just a path to a job. You know, find a place where there are people who care about transforming your life. They actually care about, you know, connecting you to the things that you're passionate about and showing you the strategies for adding real value. Right? Then you can do something practical.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems like a common theme in our discussion is interest.
Yes.
We're coming back to that word interest.
Yes.
So to begin the journey, it's interest, and to continue the journey, and to be the best is still interest.
And understanding why you're doing it. Because if you understand why you're doing it, in terms of the impact you can have on others, and the purpose behind it, that's what keeps that interest fueled. That's what keeps it alive.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Another question, actually, something that I've concluded is how important philosophy is. You know, to
it's not important.
Of course, I'm speaking to a philosopher.
Well, what is philosophy?
A professional philosopher. So, and I enjoy reading philosophy and discovering. But I really think there is a lot of value because it was the quintessential area of study millennia ago, right?
It's the subject that finds the subjects. You know, I mean, it's the foundation of all the inquiries. And philosophy just means love of wisdom. And so, I mean, this is why I left computer science and moved to, I mean, I still like doing programming, and I actually use programming as a vehicle for taking philosophical ideas and then displaying them. So I've got some examples of that. But the programming for me was too limited because it was narrowing my focus on questions that weren't fundamental enough. Because philosophy deals with the most fundamental, the biggest questions anybody ever asks. Oh, what are people? Do we have purposes? What's the foundation of things like? And these are the questions that I think ultimately, like, people care about these questions. People worry that we can't have knowledge. That's one of the barriers to even be interested in philosophy is, like, you can't actually gain knowledge.
Just skepticism.
Right.
Yeah. About knowing anything.
And that's one of the philosophical areas. It's like, how do you know things? And one thing that I've discovered as a philosopher is that everything can be questioned, but that doesn't mean that nothing can be known. And I've also been learning even recently, like, that some of the things that are the clearest to us are actually the most significant and not clearest to everybody else. And I think people have their own insights, and those insights are valuable. They're treasures for other people, and we trivialize our own insights because they're kind of already clear, but they're not clear to everybody.
Interesting, wonderful point. It's such an interesting way that you're explaining that. Now, would a intro to philosophy class in college be a good class for a student to take?
So at our school, everybody takes it, no matter what you major in. And again, because it's the subject behind all the subjects.
Right.
I mean, if you get a PhD, that's a doctorate in philosophy, right? I mean, it's not just like one more subject. It's sort of the ultimate, Well, I mean, of course I'm biased.
Yes.
What am I going to say, right? I highly recommend a degree in philosophy, or at least I don't recommend a degree for everyone. Not a degree, but at least a few classes to understand the kinds of questions that lead to all the other fields.
All the other things essentially in life,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
The questions that are important. Now, can you tell us a little bit about what your area of interest is?
Sure.
I think it's a treat for our audience to speak with you. For me, it's a treat to speak with you. What are the type of things that you're thinking about in your area of specialty, and what is it that excites you? You're talking about interest.
This might just seem strange to you, okay? But I'm the guy who lies in bed and just kind of looks up at my ceiling and wonders, why is there anything at all? Okay, I'm that guy. Like, I'm startled by the fact that, like, there's anything. Like, why not just nothing, okay? And so this sort of question kind of leads me into the foundations of existence and the foundations of people. So those are kind of my two topics I keep going to. Like, what is the nature of people? What are we? Our existence is very familiar. It's another one of those things that's like, well, it's familiar, but that doesn't mean it's not significant. It's familiar that we have thoughts, that we have feelings. But thoughts and feelings. If I take a bunch of sand and throw them up in the air, will feelings emerge? Like, how do you get feelings? How do you construct that sort of thing? And I'm always thinking about that kind of stuff. And then I really want to get to the truth of these things. That's what I care about. That when I was in college, one of the reasons that I shifted over to philosophy is because I didn't want to just inherit a worldview. I really cared about what's the truth about these things? Can it even be known? And so this isn't sort of like, okay, you find the truth and you're done. It's like this quest, a journey. So yeah, my areas of interest and specialization would be the foundations of existence and the philosophy of people or minds.
Good. Have you been able to answer some of these questions that you've been pondering upon for many years, or it's a process, or are there questions, cornerstone answers to these questions?
Yes.
Not to get delve in really big, but these are a lot of questions that young people ask, right?
Yes.
Because they are put here into the world. They grow up in a family with certain values and certain presuppositions about life. But what do you say about that?
I find it helpful to think in terms of tools. So especially like when I'm teaching my classes, my goal is to make my students more powerful, to develop their own worldview, to analyze the data they have, because everybody has different data, right?
Yes.
Everybody sees different things, and so I like to help people to kind of have some tools that they can use. So like, for example, one of the tools that I talk about is your senses. And so, you've heard of the five senses. We were talking earlier about
Yes.
how I think there's
Yes.
actually 9 senses at least.
Which is news to me.
So you have the sense of your own thoughts. You have the
Right.
sense of logical relations. There's a sense of the difference between right and wrong, even the sense of the passage of time. And some of these senses are just not really well known or well understood. We think of the 5 senses. These are like mountains, 5 mountains people go up to get to the gold called knowledge. But, I mean, there's these other mountains that you can use.
Yes.
The sense of logical relations, the sense of your own thoughts and feelings. You can get actually very powerful by understanding the relations between your own thoughts and feelings, by paying attention and using that sense and exercising it.
Wow.
And so, this is one of the tools that I use, and I find that, as I use the tools, I have come to see things. I mean, I can't pretend to be skeptical. That would be sort of dishonest of me.
Yes.
But at the same time, there's always more to see. And so there's sort of almost like a balance between coming to see things and then realizing, having the humility to understand that, I could be wrong and there's always more to see.
Yes, yes. So that's the special plug on what Dr. Rasmussen is working on or been thinking about, and it's just fascinating to know, which even is appealing when you go to college. I mean, there are things that we learn at a certain level in high school or throughout our lives that we think we have mastered. What we know everything, we know what there is to know, but there's always more to know, and we have to have a humble spirit about that. And that's another value of going to college, is when you interact with professors and even other mates, classmates, students, and you get into these dialectical discussions with them and discover that there is more to know and refine your knowledge and access new things.
If I could just add,
Sure.
I love how you're putting that, because it takes a certain courage to explore the boundaries of your knowledge and to have views that are challenged. But I think that if you can get past sort of the fear of discovering that you were wrong about the things that sort of you've inherited or that you think are true, you actually move into this other place of freedom, of joy, of discovery, and really of the expansion of your own power. Because you gain power when you can see into things, but you can never see into things if your view is not challenged, right? If your view is not challenged by other people. And so, in college there's a variety of views, and they clash into each other. And I find that even when I think I know a thing, there's always more complexity, just always. And if somebody disagrees with me, instead of feeling threatened by that, I feel like I have to sort of dig in and defend myself. I want to learn new angles, and I always find there are always more angles. And so, I guess, if we're sort of advertising the value of college, if you're looking for that place that will transform you, give you that power to be a person who doesn't merely get a job, but who for life is equipped to create jobs, who can excel in life in many dimensions, then there's just no limit to what you can know and what you can learn and what you can discover. There's a joy in that and a pleasure in that.
It's so good to hear from you that you cannot exhaust the limits of knowledge or the boundaries. More. There's always more.
Yes.
So it's so exciting because we learn every day. We pursue knowledge. It's not a done deal. You don't stop somewhere. Even your doctor, your lawyer. There's areas where you can grow and develop, and that's part of being an adult, being a learner. Being a professional is to be excited about that process, because it always makes you a better person. It always, as you said, grows your own powers and abilities. And it makes you a freer person and a happier person. And it's okay to be challenged. And that's what college does. A professor challenges your beliefs, or a mentor challenges your beliefs, or a friend challenges your beliefs. And even if you are right, and it comes to the point that you're right, you can better defend your position.
Yes.
If you are right, then you want to learn the tools to be able to defend it, to be able to articulate your position, and to be more confident about your position.
Yes, I remember when I went to Arizona State, one of the reasons for going there was because I did want my views to be challenged, and I knew there would be a variety of views there, and because I understood the value of that.
Sure, and it's there's so much insight and wisdom in that. To go to a place where it's going to be transformational for you, I think Josh mentioned that, is to look to go somewhere where you're going to have encounters, you're going to have a close access to your professors and their office hours. You can go to a university like Yale or an Ivy League university or a top UC university, but sometimes there is no contact with your professor. You know, your professor does not invest in you. It does not invest in your development, in your growth. They come and they teach, and then the rest of the time you are dealing with TAs. But other universities, you know, you can actually have conversations with your professor, and they will invest in you. And you need to look at these things. You can't be myopic about your life in terms of, well, these are the schools that I want to go to, and if I can't go to the school, then I'm a failure because I haven't gone to UCLA or UC Berkeley or Harvard. No, it's not that way. And I'm talking to parents mostly. Is the transformational capacity of that university is important, and that's something that I'm big on, Josh. Yeah. When I advise students, is to look for, you visit the universities, yes. Talk to a few professors, and
well, see. We'll host classes in my living room, and we'll just hang out. You know, especially the smaller classes, because that's what we're about. You know, I mean, I don't want to necessarily, you know, just advertise for the school that I'm at, but I mean, I love this school.
Right, yeah.
Because we do that.
Yeah. Where can you go where you can spend time with your professor in a home? And learning happens there, not just confined to a classroom, but learning happens outside of a classroom.
Yes.
And that sort of a thing. Thank you, Josh. I think we've covered a lot of ground.
Yes,
you've just given us so much to chew on and to think about, and it's been such a great interview, and you've shared a lot of the wealth of information with us.
Cool.
And I really appreciate your time, and thank you for taking the time to speak to my audience.
Well, this has been fun.
And to talk about education and the value of college.
Cool.
So thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Dr. Rassmussen. And you guys, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoy this interview. If you have any questions, feel free to write me. And I'll answer your questions, or if you want to send me emails and you have other topics that you're interested in, maybe I can do a piece to answer those questions. So I want to thank all of you. Have a wonderful weekend. The schools are starting, colleges are about to start. I wish all of you a great back-to-school experience this year, whether you're in K through 12 or you're in higher ed and in college. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon. God bless. Bye.